I'm Adam Gartenberg, and I'm one of the product managers for HCL Connections. Hopefully, I've had the chance to meet with most of you, but if not, it's very good to be here. So, talking about the business value of connections, this may seem like an unusual topic for a conference where we're likely all using connections already. But I think it's an important one because we found, and then you may have as well, that sometimes people in our organizations need a refresher on the value of connections. And more importantly, an understanding of some of the fundamental underlying differences between connections and other solutions that are out there and how we operate. So that's what we're going to be going through today. Excuse me. And what I want to start with is take a look at what connection actually means. I've worked on a lot of products over the years, a lot of different product names, some good, some not so good, some that changed and changed back again. But I really don't think I've found one that fits the product as well as connections does. And so I thought I'd begin by looking at exactly what connections means. So these are the dictionary definitions of connection. The first one is a relationship in which a person, thing, or idea is linked or associated with something else. For example, the connections between social attitudes and productivity. And then another definition is people with whom one has social or professional contact or to whom one is related, especially those with influence and able to offer one help. For example, he had connections with the music industry. And when you step back, it really, these definitions really get at the heart of what connections is, don't they? Right? It's all about connecting with people, with content, with ideas, with how they're associated with one another, and then with building relationships with the people and the work that you're working together with. And I think it's really helpful to just think about these as we go forward and look at what connections the product is and how it's different from everything else out there. But more importantly, there's a phrase that Arne Nielsen used on a recent super user call, like the group that the session we had yesterday. And as soon as I heard it, I immediately wrote it down because it so perfectly encapsulates what connections does and what makes it different. And that phrase that he used was working out loud. And when it comes down to it, that's really what connections is designed to do, right? It's designed so you can share what you're working on, meet with teams and communities of interest, stumble upon information that you wouldn't have otherwise seen. Connections defaults to open communities, open comments, an open activity feed where you can see what's going on across the company, where you can get notified when a contact likes something or see something by one of their coworkers that they think others should see as well, where you can see where everyone working on a document, you can see all their comments together and scan through it rather than things ending up in email or people being left out of that thread or having to try to go back and reconstruct that conversation. We have connections customers, and you might be among them, that actually require special permission to create a closed community. That's how committed they are to this idea of working out in the open. Connections, we found in company after company, really serves as that virtual water cooler or virtual town hall or virtual courtyard where people can get together and meet. As you may be familiar, Steve Jobs famously designed Apple's new headquarters with a giant atrium in the middle, forcing people to walk across and encounter each other, because he knows that that's how innovation happens, right? It's not me sitting at my desk doing my job by myself. It's when I can bounce ideas off other people, where I can see what they're working on and how that might help me. It's the kind of conversations I always joke that happen in the cafeteria line, where you bump into someone you haven't seen in a year and you ask what they're working on, and you discover that they just came up with a unique part of their solution or a way of dealing with a process, or they had a customer success that might help you, right? It's those kind of conversations that become harder and harder to have when you're working online, like we all are doing more and more these days. So that's why it's really, that this concept of working out loud really struck me so much. So with that in mind, one of the important things to do when you're having any kind of conversation about any solution in a business setting is to come back to what your goals are, right? This is a tool at the end of the day. It's designed to help you get your job done, help you achieve your goals. And I think it's really important to look at what your goals are so that you can make sure you're picking the right solution for your organization. So when you look at how you're working today and how you want your employees to work in the future, what is it that's really a focus? What do you want to achieve, right? What do you want to achieve through your collaboration, especially your digital collaboration? Do you want a company that is agile and self-organized and innovation-driven? Or do you want one that's structured and hierarchical, right? The solutions you pick are going to have a big impact on which direction that goes. And like I said, you need to make sure you're picking a tool that lines up with that. If you want to be innovation-driven, if you want to be agile, do you have a solution that can support that? Or is it one that forces people into a rigid hierarchy and overlays a structure on it that can be very limiting? What are the values that are important to the organization, and how do your tools support them? Is transparency important? Is open communication important? Is two-way feedback important to your organization? And again, if they are, how are you supporting that with your tools? How are you role modeling your culture in a digital environment? Does it provide a place like we saw that, like Richard and Andrew talked about yesterday, where you can get across messages from senior executives directly back to the employees and hear the feedback back up again? How are you role modeling that and providing that? It's very different working in an online setting than in a physical place, right? When everyone in my company comes into one building every morning, I can hang a banner across the front door with my company motto on it. I can have those inspirational posters on the walls that highlight the values. I can bring everyone together into the cafeteria at noon on a Wednesday and say, okay, we're going to have a town hall meeting. How do you keep everyone on the same page when they're not all together? And that may be just a business as usual company size thing, or maybe the new reality that we're all working in where, a lot of companies aren't coming back to the office, ever as a mandate for all employees, where you do have people more spread out or hybrid, and not all coming in together the way we used to be able to do. Think about your goals. Is your goal just to share documents, or is to build solutions? And how do you make that happen? But again, the tool you pick is going to have a big influence on whether you can accomplish those goals or not. This I thought was also a very compelling concept when thinking about your goals, right? Let's read this statement. This is from a IDC Futurescape report. By 2022, 40% of the Fortune 500 will re-engineer culture and collaborative practices, shifting from authorized to empowered teams, which are then measured by metrics aligned to team success. And I want you to look at that phrase again, from authorized to empowered teams, right? What you decide there, whether you just want your users to be authorized, here are the tools, go use them, do what you want, or do you want them to be empowered? If you were to go up to your CEO right now and say, what do you want? I think we'd be hard pressed to find any executive that would say, no, I don't want my people to be empowered. I don't want them to be able to take action, to bring innovations forward, to think of new ideas, to go the extra mile for the customer. I want them to just sit there and do what they're authorized to do. This is your job. You do it. No questions, no initiative, right? That's not a reality. They want empowered teams. And if that's what you really want, if you want your users to feel like they can take that initiative to really grow, you need to think about concepts like how you're engaging your employees, right? Which in turn drives that business performance and innovation and competitiveness, right? It's not really about the feature function discussion when you're thinking about the value of connections, and especially in relation to other solutions out there. It's thinking about that the philosophy that's at the heart of it, which is how are you going to make sure your employees can accomplish their goals and that they're empowered to do what they need to do. And just coming back to this again, especially in the world we're all in now, you can't afford to move backwards, right? Staying connected is more critical than ever. Having that communication line open from coworker to coworker across teams and up and down the management chain is more vital than ever. And we all need to be operating at a level of speed that we haven't before, right? The stakes are higher, it's harder to do, but it's also more crucial than ever, right? And what's at the heart of that is community and employee engagement. So let's take a look at those in a little more detail here. On the left, we have some key drivers for that employee experience. And we can divide them up into two key components here, engagement and collaboration. Employee engagement is all about keeping employees focused on the right goals, making sure they understand the values and practices for the business, and making sure they're enabled, right? They have the training and tools that they need to do their job effectively. And then at the same time, employee collaboration is all about that work management, making sure they've got communities set up so that the team can work together effectively, both inside and outside the organization, making sure they're able to manage their work, both on, in terms of direct things like sharing information, as well as the tools for tracking tasks and activities that they're working on, and coordinating across teams and holding themselves and each other accountable to what needs to get done. And then the last piece there is the company network. So looking out at who's connected to who, how you can get your job done, and know the people that you need to know to get it done, right? So much of what we do day to day relies on the people we know and who we can go to for information, for advice, to take action for us on our behalf. As any of you have started a new job or moved to even a new role inside of a company, I remember leaving one group that I'd been with, even in different roles, for about 10 years. And even though I was still inside IBM and still doing a similar role, the fact that I was with a brand new business unit, it really struck me how big a step back it was for me at first, because I didn't know who to go to for approvals or advice or understanding the processes, or who the finance person or the legal person was when I needed reviews, right? And we had connections so I could quickly build out that network. But it's really crucial to have a way of building that out and taking advantage of that network. And we know that the employee experience has a very real impact on productivity, on employee retention or turnover, on innovation and time to market for new solutions, right? That the benefits keep going and going. And the way you deliver that business impact, the way to think about it, is the different types of collaboration that you have. So on the engagement side, you've got management, excuse me, management to employee and employee back to management. And having that two-way communication is really essential, right? Just having top-down communication doesn't really do the job, because you have no idea what kind of impact that's having, whether people are paying attention or not. You lose the possibility of improvements that can come back up. It's really important to have a way to have that two-way engagement. And similarly for collaboration, you have employee to employee. That's the direct, I'm reaching out to a colleague directly, and you've got employee to team members. So how am I posting updates on my progress? How are we collaborating together in a way where everyone can see both what I'm working on, but I can also comment and add value to things other people are working on together. And all four aspects are really essential for highly functional teams and for organizations to get the most of out of their employees. So we've just talked about a number of concepts here, right? We've talked about working out loud, identifying your goals, the kind of culture and vision and organization you want to promote so that you can achieve your goals. We've talked about this concept of an authorized user versus empowered users. People can really take charge and move forward and drive success for the business, drive that innovation, drive that customer focus that all businesses need. And we talked about what you need to do to foster engagement and collaboration inside your organization. So with that, let's look at how Connections does this and delivers on this in comparison to the other leading solution out there, right? And there's no point in beating around the bush. We know that the main alternative out there that people are looking at is Microsoft 365. I'll be honest, we use it inside HCL. I know a lot of organizations, even long-time connections organizations, are starting to look at it. It's a key reason why we look at the interoperability strategy that we did, like with Connection 7, offering that integration into Teams and SharePoint and Outlook. But there are still, even if you end up coexisting in your organization with Microsoft 365, there are important things to keep in mind as to how Connections is different and why it's important to keep Connections and have that value for your employees that it's really unique in being able to deliver. And I think that the best way of exemplifying that is looking at where you start your day, right? Do you want to start your day with a single pane of glass that's centered around you, the people you work with, the actions that you have, and the content that's most relevant for you? Or do you want to start your day with a list of applications and files? And I'll go into a number of ways that Connections is differentiated and give you a framework to think about. But this really sums it up well, right? What is it that you want to be doing? Do you want to be engaging and working and discovering things with your coworkers? Or is it just, I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to create a document and save it, and I'm going to create a presentation and save it, and update a Excel file and save it and move on to the next task? It's really not an effective way of working. So if you want to have a successful digital workplace, and you look out across the different aspects of the job you're doing, it could be capturing and sharing knowledge across the organization, improving decisions by integrating information, unlocking that expertise and those ideas that sit with the people and the teams inside the company, collaborating and coordinating with others, or managing your projects and tasks. Across all of them, there are 4 concepts that are really essential here. You want a solution that is going to be user-centric, transparent, that allows you to connect with other people, and that allows content and ideas to go viral. Now let's look at each of these in more detail here. So the first, user-centric. Connections delivers a user-centric experience. It has, and it always has, put people first, not content. That means it's using your network to filter what you see and act on, not a black box algorithm that results in giving you information without context, or that ends up with low levels of collaboration and engagement. Right? With Connections, you've got a homepage that's prioritized for you, as we just saw, based on what's going on inside your network, your content, your contacts, the actions you need to take. You can tag and find expertise. This is so crucial, right? When you're looking for that expert, when you're looking for someone that can help out, right? People change jobs in the companies every 2 to 3 years, and new people come in all the time. And you need to know who to go to. And being able to know, right, even if I'm working on Connections now, but I worked on same time in the past, I might still be the best person to go to. Or maybe the person you're trying to find isn't available. They're out on leave for 2 weeks. And you need to find someone else with that expertise. It's really a key capability that we can't find elsewhere. And again, it's the idea of using people as your content filter to help pull content in that's relevant for you, important for you to see, rather than an algorithm trying to push content on you that is not going to be as relevant throughout the system. Transparency is really central to that idea of working out loud that I mentioned before, right? It's really what drives that model. And when knowledge is made visible, you can do things like easily discover relevant communities that might be helpful for you. You can see the comments that are associated with content rather than having buried in an individual file somewhere. It's available, it's discoverable. When someone new gets added to that conversation, they can immediately see and catch up on everything that's happened. It's not something that's buried in an unthreaded text string from 2 weeks back where you're trying to recreate what it is. You don't spend hours trying to recreate chat, a history from email threads that were forwarded on that are duplicated, that repeat, but also have maybe one nugget of new information buried halfway through that thread that you get added to. You're seeing updates and status updates versus private emails, right? At the end of the day, knowledge is made visible as opposed to hidden across multiple repositories that can conflict with each other, that can result in duplicated content. It can result in missed work or rework that's needed because that information has become siloed and not available for all to see. Connections is really unique in delivering a connected, we'll come back to that definition again, that connected, consistent experience for users, right? You've got, at the surface, you've got a single UI that delivers consistency across the platform. So whether I'm looking at a file or reading a news update in a blog or collaborating in a wiki, finding an answer in a forum, it's all in one place. It all has the same UI. When I click on someone's people tag, I know who they are because that's all integrated together. When I leave a comment, it'll come up on my homepage and other people's homepages or actions. And the result is I have that single version of the truth for files and content because it only lives in one place, in one repository, where I know it's not being duplicated elsewhere. In contrast to other solutions where I've got SharePoint and OneDrive and Yammer and email, where they're all loosely connected with their own UI, where I've got multiple activity streams, where I comment on something in a file, it doesn't come forward to me. When I make a status update in Yammer, it's not integrated in with anything else there. Where users have confusion on what they should be using, where Teams sticks things in OneDrive or SharePoint. I can't tell you how often I've tried to find information and end up searching place after place after place, only to end up in a SharePoint site that someone had good intentions for, but hasn't been updated in a year and a half, where I end up working on the wrong version of a file because it was posted in two separate places with similar file names, and I didn't realize I was working on the old version instead of the new one. There's actually a Microsoft consultant that has published a 75-page paper called "When to Use What in Office 365." With connections, I can sum that up in a sentence: use connections, and it just simplifies it all from there. And then the last piece, present situation aside, going viral can be a good thing, right? You want your content and ideas to be visible. We heard a great example yesterday from Bern about a blog post or comment that ended up with a meeting between the employee and a board member because of the visibility it got. There's a famous story from inside IBM where IBM, the expense payable group, the expense group, would not allow use of Uber or Lyft back when they first came on, the ride sharing first became popular, where they were, you were required to use a cab or a hired car, which was adding a lot of inconvenience and a lot of expense. And someone made a blog post about it. It went viral inside the company with hundreds and hundreds of comments. It got the visibility up to the senior executives inside the company. And within, I think, a day or two, they changed the policy. They went back, they revisited, they thought about their concerns, and they realized they were, being way too cautious here. And they changed the policy. And, I'm pretty sure that person who started this conversation would not have gone and, wrote to, one of, the head of IBM or one of the head of HR or expense at the executive level, and maybe might have filtered up eventually through their manager, and but no, this got it done in a couple of days because of that kind of visibility, right? And that is really crucial here. You don't want to end up with walled gardens. You don't want to end up with that siloed information, those private communications. That's not the right philosophy. That's not how you work out loud and are effective as a company. So with that in mind, let's come back to where we started and think about your goals, right? Let's think about that concept of the authorized user versus the empowered user and what you really want for your organization and how it's going to be most effective. And I want to come back here because we've got some troubling evidence that the trends are not heading in the right direction, especially for those that aren't using connections. This is actually from a report that Microsoft put out recently, where they studied the use of communication and Teams across their user base. I will take data where it comes from. We'll have the link when we send the presentation out later. I'd encourage you to look through it. But this is one of the quotes that stood out here. Between April 2020 and February 2021, so over the main course of the pandemic, the number of people sending chats posted in a Teams channel designed to include the whole team decreased by 5%. In contrast, the number of people sending small group or one-on-one chats have increased by 87%. Right, here's a graphical view of what that looks like. Right, we're going in the wrong direction here. People are becoming more siloed. Those broader networks that are so essential, especially when you're working remote, they found are falling by the wayside when they look at how people are using Teams and Outlook. And here's a summary from their senior principal researcher at Microsoft. When you lose connections, you stop innovating. There are no new ideas getting in, and groupthink becomes a serious possibility. Right, and of course they use connections in a lowercase c there. I think we could substitute an uppercase C, but that's it would summarize my feeling on it at least. But this is a serious problem. When people become more isolated, you don't innovate. You don't have those ideas. You don't have those aha moments, right? You don't have the kind of chance interactions that Steve Jobs knew was so critical that he designed their entire campus around fostering them. Some other quotes that stand out from here. This is by I don't even know what the title means, a CVP at Microsoft. Those impromptu encounters in the office help keep leaders honest. With the remote work, there are fewer chances to ask employees, hey, how are you? And then pick up on important cues as they respond, right? They're finding that their team people are struggling, especially new employees, because they don't have that in-person context and they don't have a network to make that happen. Right? With connections, it's very easy to post. I can see if someone's posting a status update going, I can't get this done, or it's taking too long, or who can help me with this, right? And people can respond. Microsoft, another finding they had from this data was that most of their calls are unscheduled and conducted ad hoc, and workers are feeling a pressure to keep up. Despite chat and meeting overload, 50% of people respond to Teams chats within 5 minutes or less. That means you're operating in a status of constantly being interrupted and not being able to focus on your work. And that's another thing that a solution like Connections is really ideal for, because you can still have that way of connecting with each other without having to have that instant, I must respond now, right? I can have the right tool for the job. So maybe a comment on a file that I can get an alert on and come back to later when I'm free to work on it. It can be a forum post that can go and answer that question, or a blog post that I'll leave a comment on. But it lets you use the right tool for the job, all integrated together. And it lets you respond at the right time with the right priority to it in a way that makes sense for you, but keeps the mission that you have there in mind. And then the other thing that's called out that's really essential is the importance of networking. And Microsoft is finding that with their tools, people are really struggling with this, especially with new employees, where building up that network early on is so important. And with Connections, we have the Touchpoint tool that starts you off right away with communities that'll suggest for you where you can put your interests and skills, where you can find people and communities that match those interests, so that you're starting off right away with that network, where I can go find people based on their tags and see, okay, who's someone I should know because they do a similar role to me, or they work in a related area, where I can see the org chart and their expertise and read their bio in profiles and be able to go and understand who they are or what they've worked on in the past. And build up that network that I can leverage where it's very hard to do when you're working remotely, whether it's because of COVID or just because of a distributed organization. Really, they're highlighting the problems that Connections is a solution to. So just to summarize again, as you all know, Connections integrates this all together in one place where you can get a single version of the truth, where you can harness your network to find expertise and share your own expertise, where you can collaborate together in community sites, whether it's team-based, organization-based, or communities of interest, where you can go beyond the conversation for that collaboration, and really build up that information store, where you can build up that institutional knowledge. So if someone leaves their job, all of that expertise doesn't leave with them, where you can easily share, find, and work with content, with the context that comes around it, so that you know where it fits in, and the actions that are needed around it, where you can easily customize the environment to suit your needs. And we'll hear more about that in a minute. And where you can empower your end users, where you end up with engaged and empowered users, not just authorized users. And at the end of the day, with a solution that is built around users, that has the transparency that they need, that allows people to connect with one another and with content, and where good ideas can go viral. And so I will leave it there. I see there are a couple of questions here, comments about IBM, where they're going. I'm not with IBM anymore, so I can't answer what they're doing with Connections or not. I'm very excited that we're rolling it out here at HCL, and that we're making use of that.
You again.